Happy New Year to you. Oh, it's Aya. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Kayla Magwa. Happy New Year. Good morning, Aya.
Good morning, Kayla, and Happy New Year to you as well. Well, you know these things do happen, don't they? Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Why did you guys play this trick on me? I called Kayode this morning. We decided what we were going to wear. We said we were going to do this and do that. So both of us.
Oh, so I didn't get that memo. Oh, Kayla, no. So you had that agreement. Now I know. I mean, don't worry. Now I know. Don't worry. I know exactly what's happening there.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Well,
I'm fine. I was watching you at the end of your programs, and I was like, my Ayo. In between Imi and Ayola. I was like, yes, only Ayo can handle this situation.
Well, you know.
Lovely. What a wonderful recap you had of 2024.
To be honest,
remember a lot of the things that we forgot.
Absolutely. You know, to be honest, you know, many times when we are looking at the year in review, we're only looking at maybe the past few months. It's unconscious, but it's just what happens. But when you now look at, when you now have the opportunity, the privilege of hosting a program like that, you and I know that along the line, you just remember that, wait a minute, oh, something happened in February, oh, something happened. And then you now begin to go back in time to bring up all those issues, how far they have impacted our lives down the rest of the month and even down through the years. And that's one of the opportunities we get for doing that. So it's really, really a fabulous one. And this year, 2025, is no less another one that by December we'll be looking back. So it's a good time for us to even say, okay, so what do we want to achieve in the year 2025 as individuals, as organizations, as families, as society, as a nation, as a state? What are those opportunities that the year brings? They are there. What are the challenges that we'll confront? They are there. And what are the hurdles we have to scale? They are there. Who are the people that are going to be problems? They are there. So maybe it's a good time for us to begin to take stock of those things, Kayla.
I mean, it was really lovely. I was thinking about something. I'm going to open up a jar or a box somewhere in the office where everything that happens, anything that is noteworthy that happens during the year, I'm just going to write it down on a piece of paper and drop it in that box. And then by December, I'll just bring out the box and then we can really remember every single thing that stood out for us in the year. I'm going to start it today, honestly. But while we celebrate the new year, take in this lovely view from Niger State. It's one of those skylines that I wish we didn't have to speak during the skyline. We could just let it play and just listen to how calming this place is. Gurara Falls, one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. And such a lovely sight this new year. Listen, everything that we need to have perfect holidays, to have peace of mind, health of body, it's in this country. Look at that waterfall. Look at the stones in there, you know, and just all that it takes to create such magic. I can't think of any other reason why this would exist except God, because He's the only one I know who could paint such a perfect picture with the landscape. Just look at that waterfall, Ayo.
Sometimes it's better to see it live, just to be sure that indeed this is not just something someone created, it is something that nature literally created. You know, Kayla, a funny sight in my head right now is just imagine fireworks in the night right around Gurara waterfalls. I mean, just imagine it. Coming here this morning, and I was looking down Twitter Road or X Road, and I saw a video of fireworks in Kano State, counting down to the year, and they were counting down in Hausa. Please don't even ask me, because I don't know how, but this site is certainly one that is golden, Kayla, one that is never really goes out of fashion.
Listen, it is 30 meters in height. It's in the Gurara River along the Suleja Mina Road. So it's like 30 minutes from Suleja. So we can do this, Ayo. We actually can. You know, it's a tourism attraction. It's got a bit of a checkered history, but it's one of the major tourist sites in Nigeria. And there have been plans in recent times to turn it into some kind of resort with a recreation center and a 7-star hotel around it. But you see, this entire area is hiking heaven, let me tell you. And for those who want to join that particular pastime in 2025, there are rules. You see, these places, you're not allowed to throw anything on the floor. You're not allowed to distort the ecosystem in any way. A lot of these hiking groups have a lot of rules and regulations about how they conduct themselves in places like Gurara Waterfall, you know, and in other parts of the country. But yeah, very beautiful, beautiful place. And according to oral history, it was discovered by a Gwari hunter in 1745. Yes, the Gwari hunter's name was, the hunter's name was Buba. His name was Buba, and they said he found it before Europeans discovered it in 1925. So there is a lot of, you know, that back and forth where the foreign history says it was 1925, but oral folklore in this neighborhood says it was discovered by Buba, a hunter who is Gwari, in 1745, and it was worshipped. This particular waterfall, just right there, was worshipped by people living in the communities around it. And they'll say that the waterfall and the river are named after 2 deities. The deities are Gura and Rara.
Indeed, these sites, Kayla, are heavenly. They're just divine. I mean, there is no way you would not want to create some kind of awe around them, because you just merely look at it and you just say, oh Lord my God, how great thou art. I mean, it's just natural. Just as you said earlier, only God could have pulled up a thing like this. So I don't know if people create waterfalls, but if they do create waterfalls, then there'll be a lot of mechanization around it and electrification to ensure that it doesn't stop. But hey, show me the one that is powering this one, except the weather. So indeed, it is a very, very beautiful sight, and at all times something to cherish, Kayla.
Well, we do have quite a lot to get into today, so we will start off with the newspapers, and when we come back, our guest will be here. Stay with us.
Today is January 1, 2025, and you're welcome. Let's begin with the Guardian newspaper. Eyes on key economic indices as Tinubu promises new dawn. Details of that story you'll find on page 6 of the paper this morning. Daily Independent has Tinubu assures of reducing cost of food, essential drugs in 2025. Says indicators point to a positive, encouraging outlook for country. Declares youth confab to begin in the first quarter of the year. Mulls access to credit for individuals, critical sectors of the economy. FG to establish National Credit Company for financial institutions and enterprises. The details of that story you'll find on page 29 of the paper this morning. If you look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, NLC sets 2025 agenda for FG as Tinubu rallies Nigerians for positive prospects. NLC seeks wage review amid economic hardship. President says National Credit Guarantee Company coming to provide credit for individuals. Insists on necessary reforms to foster sustainable growth, prosperity. To unveil National Values Charter, Youth Confab. 2025 will sweep away years of hardship, as coming from Atiku. PDP to Tinubu, no need for New Year message void of solution to hardship. The details of that story you'll find on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. The Vanguard newspaper has 2025. Experts see little respite from inflation, naira depreciation, macroeconomic growth projected, power sector reforms imperative. Details you'll find on page 22 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The front page of New Telegraph, New Year messages. Don't get distracted by politicians. Tinubu warns Nigerians. Declares 2025 year of great promise. Vows increased access to credit, to reduce inflation from 34.6% to 15%, unveiled National Values Charter, seeks governors' cooperation on tax review, Agric, others. Abbas, Atiku, Mba, Oborevori, others offer goodwill messages. NLC demands governance with benefits, policies without strong arm tactics to engage government on wage review. Address corruption, wasteful spending in 2025. PDP tells Tinubu. The details of that story on the inside pages of the paper. Business Day, Naira stability, lower inflation to shape economy in 2025. Good news or good news? Well, you find the details. Well, you find the details on the inside pages of the paper. And look at the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. Tax reforms. Listen to Nigerians. Bauchi governor tells Tinubu. You find the details of that story on the inside pages of Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Times has presidency statement on Governor Mohammed's tax reform bills comment. Presidency statement on Governor Mohammed's tax reform bills comment misleading. That's from Bauchi. The details of that also on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And these are the papers we have for you today.
Quite a lot going on in the papers this morning and quite a lot to talk about this new year. And we'll start that conversation immediately. Joining us in the studio, let me start off with High Chief Peter Ame, the National Secretary of Coalition of United Political Parties, CUPP. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And we have the Presidential Media Aide, Mr. Daniel Buala, joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good morning.
So let's start the conversation with the president's New Year message. I'm going to start off with Mr. Ame. So a year of prosperity and a lot of hope we keep hearing from the president. Hopeful, hopeful, hopeful. And that is, even in church yesterday, that was a lot of the messages that we were getting, because we are at a point where we do have to hold on to hope. Especially when there is, in your mind, no hope to speak of. You have to hold on to something. Is that what's going on here, or should we be practical in how this year is going to run?
No, sincerely, we should be practical in how this year is going to run. We should rely more on, practical solutions to our problems, because the 2024 year was a very harsh one for our people. The poverty level, skyrocketed, because of the impulsive and irrational decisions, policy-making process by the president. And you saw that a lot of people, you can't even hide it. It's obvious on the faces of people as you walk on the street that this country is not working and things are not working well. And when you go to presidential media chat with softball discussions without presenting the data, the information that is at the public domain. If you talk about when the president said that in the last one that corruption cannot be, it was a wrong perception, because the data in the public today is Nigeria is 146 against 180 countries in the corruption perception index. When it comes to the human development index, Nigeria is 146, we are 140 something over 189. So we don't have a situation where we have 39.6 million hectares of land to farm. When the president had made promise when he got into office that he will be tilling over 500 hectares of land yearly, he had never done that. It is more talk with no action, and that has cost our people more poverty, more pain. And looking at 56% of our population is living below poverty line. That's about 129 million people. You are looking at statistics that are very, very, scary.
Yeah.
That we are not sitting down, and the president is not looking at figures, and they are bringing rhetorics and talking about people driving Rolls-Royce and now driving Camry. What about the people who were driving Camry before? What are they driving now?
Bicycle.
What about these who are driving bicycles? What are they driving now? So it's a cascading thing. If you say that means the poverty level has really hit it deep into the fabric of the masses.
Well, let's talk to Mr. Buala about that. You've heard what Mr. Pitame had to say. He believes that we need to be a bit more practical. The president, he says, needs to be a bit more practical. Is that the case? Or is there an understanding we don't have, Mr. Buala? Oh, I think we've lost the connection to him. I hope we get him back real shortly. But, that's a very interesting dynamic, when it comes to the conversations about how 2024 has been and how we should be viewing 2025. But, he did say also we shouldn't spend the whole of 2025 lamenting. Maybe we should start thinking about some actions that we can take, even as people. Isn't that some way, some move in the right direction?
everybody gives hope. The churches are giving hope already. The religious centers are giving hope already. The work of the president is to do, is to come and solve our problems. He was outside the campaign, he canvassed, he talked to people that he knew, he is aware of the solution of the problem confronting this country. And you are coming, you are compounding it. In the last 20 months, Nigerian debt servicing has risen from 87 trillion to 130-something trillion. So we cannot continue to have more talk, and there are no action. For me, the president is not putting his data card on the table properly, and he's not thinking that Nigerians are the major reason why he's in government. Because he has been talking as if we're all about complaining. Nigerians are complaining. Nigerians are but the things are hard. The economy is not helping the issue.
Well, he said he's going to help. I'm going to look at his New Year message. As we enter 2025, I wish everyone a happy and prosperous New Year, he says. And then he also goes on to say that in this new year, my administration will further consolidate and increase access to credit for individuals and critical sectors of the economy to boost national economic output. And he says to achieve this, the federal government will establish the National Credit Guarantee Company to expand risk-sharing instruments for financial institutions and enterprises. That is something.
You see, for me, for us and a lot of Nigerians, I keep on telling you, it's not about continue to expand government, and create more bureaucratic bottlenecks that make government, the vehicle for running government become more difficult. There are already agencies that are started, like when the Livestock Ministry was created, that can also work very well if the president is determined to make sure things work. The president should concentrate on making sure that there's food on the table of the masses. Those who are the lowest half of our population, those who have been captured as one of the 129 million people living below poverty line. You can work a system from just reading papers and reading documents. It is the same president that is reading this that talked about the CNG. That we're going to roll out buses. There are no buses anywhere till today. It's the same president that is talking about this.
I saw a little bit of a rollout here in Abuja. I saw governors. I saw in Oyo. I saw some governors rolling out some CNG buses. In Abuja, there's one that runs from Suleja to
you talk about one. You have to look at the ratio to the population. We're looking at if you really want to do something, we don't do cosmetic, when it comes to solution finding process. You have to be holistic in your decision. First of all, I had a problem with the fuel subsidy removal process, the procedure, not the removal per se, because there was corruption, nothing was dealt, nothing happened to the corruption in that system. People left with their money, left with the lies, and left with the fraud, and nothing happened to be able to solve that problem. Then there was also an issue of a process of starting in a way that that you would have eased it up and provide the solutions before you come with the problem. The people went into hunger. Transportation costs went by 300% immediately. The president announced the removal of subsidy. So these are the issues. It is this impulsive nature and this irrational nature of policy creating implementation announcement process for the president that has even compounded our problem. We're not saying that you wouldn't do anything. We're wishing this country well, because this country, we love this country, we live in this country. We want to be able to give hope. But the job of the president is beyond hope. It's also attached with action and result. That the promises you have made, like promises of tilling 500,000 of arable land. That would have brought the price of food inflation that is over 40% down. That would have helped the country.
I want to talk, because I know you do have to go catch your flight real soon, so I'm going to toss it to Ayo so he can ask you a few questions before we let you go. Ayo.
Kela, sir, one of the issues that anyone would be asking you is whether or not this is not just all political talk. Whether or not, you don't see any progress that has been made, because it is in the nature of politicians to do all the talking just to get all the sound bites. Even the president, in one of the headlines that we read this morning, he said that we should be wary of politicians. So is this all political talk for you?
No, if it is all political talk, I won't be reading out statistics, because data is very important when you come to public management of our public resources and government. And I'm telling you that in the last 20 months alone, our debt statistics have risen to 137 trillion. It's something that should worry all of us, not only just people in opposition. The fact is that we want to see the president work. We want to see him do work that will benefit the life of the masses. Because if the top echelon of the society gets to benefit from the public wealth, and you go to rural community, I think one of the things the president aides should do and the 4th SARM should do is that the president should engage the rural ungoverned communities more and see the level of poverty that
should that be the responsibility? Should that be the responsibility of the president or the responsibility of the state governors? If we expect that the president should go to all local governments, are we giving the governors a slap on the wrist? Are we giving them an excuse to step away and do nothing?
If you know me very well, you know I've always talked about governors have been the weakest link in our political and governance system, because governors are just like they believe in the feeding bottle arrangement, like a feeder pillar thing, comes every end of the month, collects money. And a lot of governors are actually now doing a lot of work to change that, to try to improve that. But the buck stops at the table of the government. We have a central governance system, the federating unit. You look at Bala Mohammed speaking on television yesterday and saying that he has been struggling to meet a federal agency so that they can do something to help his state, and it has been very difficult. You have that situation that we have a very tight-fisted control by those who are at the federal level. We have a federating unit that you have state, local government, and federal. But the fact is that our system, that's why people have advocated for more devolution of power. Yes, the state government have problem. The local government problem is being solved gradually when they start to get their direct line charge from the federation account. But all in all, there are certain policies that are taken by the federal government that affects everyone that lives within the territorial integrity.
I do get that message, Mr. Ame, but I still ask the question again. Whether or not, because if we are saying that it's got to be the president, it's got to be the federal government all of the time, it will sound like there is no power for any state government to do anything. For instance, the Electricity Act already empowered state governments to create their own electricity. They are at liberty to do that. And a number of other things have been devolved to them. For a very long time, it was a struggle to get state governments to allow the constitution to function optimally as it should, by allowing the local government administrations to perform. If the local governments were doing exactly as they should, receiving their funds and activating development at their own levels, the people on the ground in the local governments will feel it. This is not absorbing the federal government. This is just saying the powers have been devolved according to the constitution. Why are we having issues at that level? Why does everything have to be about the president?
I've done extensive work with the local government system, and I know you received some of my messages. When it comes to the financial autonomy, it is Section 162 that now has taken away the state and local government joint account that has been a thorn in the flesh of the local government getting their finances. But Section 197 that controls the CX that are like toothless bulldog that are ineffective in the management of electoral system in the state. When I ask people questions, I say, how many electoral agencies do you have in Nigeria? People will say, no, one. It's not one. We have in each state, federal independent federal state electoral agency, then we have one federal, and these people are all autonomous. They have authority, they have independence, and they are all now in the wings of the governor of the state that are manipulating them, because we have a weak state assembly system. The weak state assembly system is actually more of a problem than even the local government and the state government, because the state assembly are supposed to be supervising the governor. They are supposed to be in charge of the governor. The governor can't approve budget. The governor can't do project. They are supposed to supervise it, but those ones are nowhere to be found. And most of the state budget that has been signed today were signed with less than 48 hours being presented. So we have a problem there that we are discussing. But what we came today to do is to look at holistically the data that is before the public, the statistics that is beyond the international community, and how the present perception or his attitude or body language towards this data worsens situation further. When you ask a president, now what do you talk about corruption? I say, no, everywhere there's corruption. Corruption is everywhere. No, it's the number one image maker for this country. And when you have a corruption perception index that you are running 180 to 140 something, then you must be able to talk tough. Is that talking tough that also help matters? If you look at countries like Singapore, like South Korea, that have almost eliminated corruption in their system, it's because governance system also work. You don't have a governance system now where the president runs on convoy of over 100 vehicles. We buy vehicles for the presidency almost every year. We have a reputation of utensils that we buy every year. We have a line item in our budget that is embarrassing and shameful. If we want to progress, we have to have a cost-costing measure to be able to cut down the cost of government first, and then block leakages and loopholes. If we do these two things and marry them together effectively, then we will have a future for our next generation.
I know that if we continue this conversation, we will not end, but we will have you back again so we can have more of this conversation on the plans for 2025. But I want to thank you so much, Mr. Peter Ame.
Thank you.
And I know you're going on a trip. Right now, I saw your principal really this morning was at an IDP camp as he finished from there.
No, I was there too with him.
You were there with him?
Yeah.
Well, our greetings to him and to everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter Ame, for being with us. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll get another perspective on the topic. Stay with us. And we have Mr. Daniel Bola back with us, the essay to the President on policy and communication. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I know you were listening a little bit to some of the conversation that we're having in the beginning, and basically an expression of frustration really on the state of things in the country. And many people believing that the President is not really as firm as he should be on some of the issues that many Nigerians hold very dear. Our guest talked about corruption, but then there are other areas. But you've heard this before. Is this true? Is he not taking it as seriously as people would expect him to, or is this the way to go to calm frayed nerves?
Well, my apologies because of technical glitch. I actually haven't heard what he said. But if I understand your question as saying whether the president is firm on his policy or decision, I can tell you that the president is very committed to it, and that can be seen in the various activities of the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. The president wants to project himself as one who will allow systems to work themselves, allow institutions to work themselves, because if you recall, we're just coming off of the back of allegations that strong leaders influence institutions, they direct institutions, they control institutions. So the president would always want to allow institutions to run themselves, but it will ensure that the institutions of government are given all the wherewithal that they need to be able to function effectively.
I mean, that's a very interesting one there, wanting systems to work so that, and we've said it so many times, so that regardless of who comes into power, the system is stronger than you, Mr. Strongman or Strongwoman. You would have no choice but to adhere to what the system is saying. But that takes time. Do you think he'll be able to get these systems working and running well and functional before he leaves office? Even if he does spend 8 years in office?
Right, that's the idea of democracy. It's a work in progress. So we, as a people, we have to make up our mind on whether we want things to work organically or whether we want to influence things even if they are not consistent with organic growth. Oftentimes in life generally, when you try to influence something to grow faster than it should, like you can see in the case of the natural evolution of chicken from egg and all of that, you may end up breaking it, because if you don't allow it to grow naturally and organically, you are likely going to affect the growth process by making it inefficient, or that much more later in the future it will start malfunctioning. I know there is the temptation of strong leadership in Africa where we are coming off of the back of military regimes where you feel that a strong leader should be able to bypass protocol or wave the magic wand and try to make sure institutions work over. So let me give you an example. If a case is presented to, let's say, anti-graft body to investigate, there is this belief that the masses often have that the president should sort of, if the general perception of the public is that the person being investigated in the mind of the people has been adjudged as guilty. So they will want a situation where the president will wield the magic stick and ensure that the law enforcement agency of government kind of, go faster, even if the investigation is one that requires time. But the president is trying to change this idea. Let us allow institutions to work. We have the furthest step of the range, which is the media, who would always bring to light whether or not there is interference of government, whether or not things are going organically, and whether or not there is the influence of government in order to obstruct the course of justice. So however long it will take, we have to allow things to grow. It is like the economy. There are people who think that because the president came and then implemented some policies that it should change overnight. It should not grow gradually by looking at the indices of growth economically. But it doesn't work that way. We have to allow system to work the way they are built to work. We can facilitate the movement of the system by making sure all the infrastructure that is needed for the system to function optimally are provided.
I want to take you up on something you talked about recently. I think it was on X. At the time, the military leader in Niger, I think his name is Abdurrahman Chiani, you responded to those allegations that he made. In fact, I want to use your words exactly. You said that they were baseless propaganda designed to create chaos and incite bad blood in northern Nigeria against President Tinubu. That puts a political angle to it. But you see, I'm going to get you to talk about that. But having at the back of your mind the fact that many people, especially in diplomatic circles, believe that, you know, the stand of President Tinubu as head of heads of governments in ECOWAS, and his stand when it came to those military coups in our neighboring countries were a little too hard. And many people have said that, you know, it's the economic community of West African states, not the political community of West African states. Why don't you focus on growing the economy in the region? Why are you delving into the politics of the place? And then seeing him a lot with President Macron made people to start believing that there might be some kind of collusion. With that in mind, you know, talk to us a little bit about our relationship with our neighbors in these hard times.
You know that this whole concept of theories around politics, economy, and governance is one that is intertwined. So there is economics of politics, and there is political economy. And sometimes when you try to move with them, they work hand in hand. For example, there is no way you can foster economic growth in the geopolitical region of the West Africa without looking at other indices that facilitate the economic development or collaboration. If there is insecurity, there's no way there will be integration of economic growth or collaboration among the West African states. If there are political problems, such as one is running a military regime, the other one is running a democratic government, how will the countries that are running democratic government relate with the military regime? So, for example, if you have a meeting of foreign affairs ministers or you have a ministers or economic ministers, you'll find that there are incompatibility. And therefore, you have to look at the ideals of ECOWAS. The president being the leader of ECOWAS, he leads, he does not command. It has to be a resolution of the community in every state. Now, those ones who have decided to leave because of their problems with France, decided to create a problem for themselves in West Africa. If you have seen the posture of ECOWAS, they are looking at it from the point of view of managing them. Even when they threaten to leave, they say, okay, you have all the right to leave, you can give us timeline, but we are hoping that you will reconsider this in the course of going, because you cannot grow in isolation. It has to be a coming together. And at the beginning, yes, the president may have, you know, come out with strong stance, like saying, we're going to send military and all of that. This is what you see in international relations and diplomatic relationship. You remember Barack Obama once said that the red line for him is A, B, and C, and if it happens, he was going to, you know, deal with Iran. They crossed the red line. But then you have to find ways of still deploying your diplomatic skills to see how you can resolve. Because the days of demonstrating strong strength and power, they are gone. We have to work together as a people, as a community, and as neighbors. And Nigeria, of course, you may know, it will interest you to know, has been a senior brother to most of our West African neighbors, and have helped them tremendously and continue to help them in this endeavor.
Let's talk a bit about the economy, and maybe people are tying our economic growth in 2025 to the 2025 budget. A budget that many people have said is actually lesser in value. If you look at the value of the dollar in 2023, it's actually lesser in value, yet very bold in the things it seems it wants to achieve. Is this the budget that can actually get Nigerians the economic development that they need, lift them out of poverty, improve their living standards, improve the quality of the money in their pocket? We actually saw reports towards the end of the year that says, from AfriInvest, I'm going to quote them, from AfriInvest, and they said that the naira might even get to 1,800 to the dollar by the end of this year. We're hearing that the inflation figures might actually still increase. higher than where we are. And this lofty aim of 15% by the end of the year is not possible if we look at the economic figures. If we look at the figures on ground, it's not possible.
Yes, so it's bold and ambitious by saying that you're hoping to have the inflation by the end of 1 year. And budget is about estimates. It is not like a finality. Sometimes in the course of implementation, you might need to come with supplementary appropriation to the national, for appropriation to the National Assembly. But the question around dollar and naira, you need to know that we don't want a dollarized economy. We want a naira-based economy. And we don't use dollar in Nigeria. We use naira. When workers are paid, they are paid in naira. When they go to the market, if they buy homemade products, they are going to buy based on the strength and competition of the naira. And that's why we're looking at areas where the basic needs of the people will be homemade and home produce. Like, for example, in agriculture. Even this inflation that you're talking about, you can have inflation if you can deal decisively with agriculture, because a large part of the inflation is from the food inflation. The rising cost of food items is the one that has a cyclical effect in other areas of the economy. And if you look at that budget, you will see that security has a bolster, because we know security affects agricultural production if you look at the Northwest and the Northeast. So if we're able to strengthen security in Nigeria, our people will go back to farms and we'll be able to have homemade produce that will serve our people. And then secondly, if you look at education, because empowerment of the people is also key to economic growth. So and if you look at agriculture, for example, part of the commitment of the president, even in the speech, is that we are going to ramp up, the effort to make sure there is agricultural boom in Nigeria. Once you do that, and then private sector come into play, believe me, it is possible for us to get the 15%. And even if we don't get the 15% and will come near that, it will still be considered as a progress. But it is better to set a target that cannot be achieved and work towards it than set a target that can be achieved and it become predicted.
I want to get your thoughts on one of the accusations also, not just about the budget this time, but even the media chats that he had with members of the media not too long ago. Basically an accusation that the president is not very people-centric in the way that he's carrying on and things he's saying. We're hearing him say some particular things that people are finding issue with. And then, of course, we see even people looking at the budget and say, this is such an anti-people budget. It's got nothing to do with the Nigerian person, despite the fact that before that budget presentation, before the media chat, the conversation had been on that maybe just so you can, Nigerians like optics, we like to feel a certain way. Maybe he should have said the budget was the budget of the common man, I remember that media chat was coming at a time when there was stampedes, and these stampedes were, caused in many ways, at least for the people who are involved, who are facing the situation. So if the economic situation was better, people wouldn't be lining up for rice and getting stampeded and dying in 3 states. I want to be able to get your, at least from a personal relationship that you have with the president, his mien when it comes to people-centric policies and human capital development. Is there some kind of work that needs to be done there in your view, or is this okay as is and we should expect the best from what we're hearing?
The thing is that people love to run with sound bites. And after he finished his chat, somebody said the budget is not people-centric, and then it caught fire in the media. What difference does it make if the subject of the budget is budget for heaven, but the content of the budget is people-centric? So people look at the caption to reflect the entire body of the budget. If you say it's a budget of restoration, for example, restoration to who? Is it to America or to England? Is the restoration of hope to the Nigerian people? Because they lost their hope because of the evolution of economic underdevelopment in Nigeria over time. And so we are looking at the fundamentals and ensuring that those things that keep economy strong, such as human capital, natural resources exploration, dealing with institutional framework, and ensuring that the climate is conducive for investment. All of these things are indices that talks about the growth or lack thereof of economy of a nation. Now, talking about people-centric president, I think, in my opinion, this president, in the last probably past 3 or 4 presidents, has demonstrated that he's the most people-centric president in Nigeria. What does it mean to be a people-centric president? A people-centric president is a president that looks at those things that affect people, common people, those things that affect the dinner table or the breakfast table, those things that keep parents awake at night because the next morning they may not be able to afford the school fees for their children. He introduced Nelfon, the agricultural something. He introduced a lot of agricultural initiatives that were, they think of having a sleepless night because of transportation of the next day. He introduced the CNG initiative. All of these things, who are they for? They are for the common people. Even when you remember the issue of the dollar, when he floated the naira, some people don't know it is people-centric initiative. Because when we were defending the naira, who were the beneficiaries of the racket? It is established people, the bank executives, it is manufacturers, the elite. They are the ones that access the dollar at a certain rate. They don't even use it for the purpose it is intended for. He decided, no, this economy must redistribute the wealth across all platforms, and the common man must have that. The local government autonomy, what is it for? People-centric. Because we have forgotten about government at the local level. So everybody thinks my dream can only be achieved in Abuja. But by the introduction of local government autonomy, what is it meant for? So that people at the local level can access basic health care, basic things of security. They will be able to have good agriculture. They will attend to other chieftaincy matters and things that affect the common man. So this is the most people-centric president. But people want to run with punchline and soundbite.
I'm going to toss it to my colleague in Lagos. Ayo has a few questions for you.
Thank you, Kayla. You know, Mr. Boala, it can't be easy for anyone in government at this time. I mean, you would want to admit that. And I know that there are issues you have to contend with, but that are befuddling. But we don't have to know all of that. So what would you advise? I mean, the president has put out a statement. What would... And of course, naturally, you would want everyone to line up behind him. But what would be your consideration, your counsel, in terms of what you expect people to do while waiting for this uhuru that the president is promising?
So the expectation of the Nigerian people will not be cut short. But one of the ways by which I believe that the citizens can key into government program, number one is to have faith and trust in the leadership of the country. Faith and trust and allegiance to the flag and to the republic. And that is why the president has decided, you remember, based on the last fake meeting where they agreed on National Value Charter. This National Value Charter is to create a platform of sensitization, to the Nigerian people to understand that we grow together and then we can play our part in nation building. Why do you think America is considered the greatest country in the world? It's because of that true faith and allegiance that the American people give to the flag and to their republic. Now, because of politics and a lot of other factors in Nigeria, you'll find that people look at government from the prism of political party affiliation. This president, to come back to the point, this president, if you have noticed, in the way he runs the affairs of the government, has had dealings with people from the opposition and other political parties, to the point that his own party keep criticizing him for reaching out to people across the aisles so we can have a government of national unity. What more can you expect from a president who wants to and has demonstrated by leadership that he wants national orientation where the people will have confidence in their government? And that does not, the fourth estate of the media, they're always there to gauge and checkmate the government. So the people have faith knowing that the media is there to provide checks that you need. But the idea that people are even calling foreign government into Nigeria, you find that a military junta in another country wanting to divide Nigeria across region, and then Nigerians are buying into that. That is part of the things we want to deconstruct from the mind of the Nigerian people so we can have faith and true allegiance to the flag and the republic.
But Mr. Boala, Nigeria has been, at least between Nigeria and Nigerians, the trust bank is in red. it's minus. It doesn't exist, and it's going to take quite a while to build it back, be it political, economic, even social. Yesterday we had that conversation with the governor of Bauchi State, and he's also said it, something that's right there on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The fact that the president should listen, and that was his passing shot yesterday, that the president should listen to Nigerians, the president should listen to governors, and how that plays out, I guess it is left to be seen. So there is that position in some quarters, particularly among the governors, concerning this tax bill in particular, that the president is not listening to them.
So, you see, context is important even in the way he responded. I listened to his interview. He was not rude to the president. In fact, he was very cautious, and I respect that. And as a governor of a state, he's speaking on behalf of his state. There are some governors who share his view, and some who have a divergent view regarding that. The part I disagree with him is the part that he creates the insinuation that the president does not listen. Why? Because if as a group of governors you do not get the president to do your bidding, it doesn't mean he doesn't respond to Nigeria, because the governors are 36 and the minister of FCT maybe 37, but the Nigerian people are over 200 million. And you know, because you started by talking about trust deficit in the country, you know that for the most part, governors or leaders do not really speak the intention and the interest of their people. So you have to, in order for me to separate that, and the governor was very explicit in the way he responded. He said, look, my state is dependent on VAT and taxes. So this decision is going to affect my state. He's very honest about that. But the government has communicated in a very clear terms to all the governors and the stakeholders and all who care to listen that the tax reform bill is actually going to help your own state and not enter your state. But the tax reform bill is also encouraging production. You have, as we are for the step of the rain, interrogated leaders on the need for us to build a production-based economy and not one that is dependent on, stamps from federal government. And that is the direction we all are looking. Dialogue is important. If the president is not listening, then the president would have simply approached the Supreme Court, get the verdict of court, and then begin to force the tax reform through their throat. But it is still under consideration, and it went through the National Assembly. I think that rather than scapegoating and blackmailing the president, the governors should talk to their lawmakers, because the way the democracy works, he has presented his bill to the National Assembly. It is the National Assembly that will deliberate and do what they need to do in the process of the passage. So if a governor has a concern, in my view, after having that conversation with the federal government, is to dialogue with the members of the National Assembly from your state to take and articulate your concern in the National Assembly. At the end of the day, it will come down to voting. I think that a lot of people are blackmailing the president, and I'm not particularly mentioning anybody, because if the president is not a legislative branch of the government, no matter how, except if you are saying the president should withdraw the tax bill. I have not seen a single governor in Nigeria, Mr. Ayo, who says that the tax reform bill is not good for Nigeria. No, I've not heard. I have only heard that governors from the states where if these taxes are implemented, it will reduce their revenue, they are complaining because it will reduce their own revenue. I think let us distill and separate the chaff from the sheep. And it is only natural if you are collecting 10,000 every day, and with this introduction, it's likely going to be 8,000 for you to react. But don't use that to say it is a reflection of what the masses are thinking about, because the tax reform bill primarily benefits the common man. You know the content, so there's no time for us to be able to discuss more. It is a people-centric tax reform. So the governor should align with that, and then the deliberation can go on. You can deliberate with the president and make your recommendation, but you cannot throw the baby with the bathwater.
When my colleagues in the media had that interface with the president dared them to mention one minister that wasn't working. Maybe for some reason, my colleagues weren't able to point out the minister of power, because it was the instinctive thing that came to me just viewing it live. And I'm still wondering, is it that the president doesn't have the information that the national grid collapsed at least 12 times last year, 2024? or that the minister himself, that the president is not aware that the minister is blaming it or on vandalism, when even the NNPCL was also talking about sabotage at some point before the GMD of the NNPCL decided, I'm going to take the bull by the horn and I'm going to sit down there and make sure that these things get done. And thankfully, we have 2 refineries optimally now, working right now. So talking about that, what is the president aware of everything that is going on? Is the president aware that the national grid collapsed 12 times last year and the minister is blaming it on vandalism?
So to be honest with you, this is where I will indict the members of the press. You bring us every day and you try to flog us with a whipping flog on issues regarding to government. In fact, it got to a point where people said, why are you people shielding the president? Bring him out and let him face the Nigerian people. The president came unscripted, very clear about his messaging, very clear about his responses to the question. It is not one person that interviewed him that you will say, okay, there are supervening events. I think it's about 6 or 7 high-level media representatives. And
7,
he challenged
actually.
them. 7. And he challenged them as you mentioned one. The only person they mentioned was Wike. And you know that when it comes to performance, that's the wrong way. If you are going to report Wike to the president on other matters, that may be a viable report. But if it is on performance, which was the context in which you said point at one, you know that Wike was even a distraction. They fail, Mr. Ayo. They failed to mention one. Who are you going to blame? You are going to blame them and not us. You are going to blame them and not me.
Well, I'm putting the question to you now, Mr. Buhala. I'm putting the question to you now. These things happen in the media. We get all those things from time to time. And I know you understand, because sometimes you send us some feedback as well when we're on air. So answer the question, Mr. Buhala. Is it that the president is not aware at that time that the national grid had collapsed quite a number of times?
The president is aware of what is happening in Nigeria. He has a firm grasp. Remember, if the president does not know the need for effectiveness and punishment, as a means by which you strengthen governance, the president will not have introduced performance indicators. Performance assessment, sorry. He introduced that, and he has the measure by which he checkmate the deliverables as against the expectation for each minister and ministry. Now, at his own level, he did what he had to do the other time when he rejigged a little bit. The president is welcoming. And if you have noticed, this president on several occasions, when there is a public outcry on issues, he has reacted. So, assuming without considering that there are 5, 10, or even 15 ministers that are non-functional or ineffective, if these people were mentioned before the president and you adduce facts to support, like in the case of power now, where you are mentioning number of times the grid collapse, let's assume you mention what you are likely to get in that interview will either be a reason that the president will give as to why the grid collapsed, or that would have been a revelation to the president of the need to have to look deep into the power ministry and do what he has to do. Before I was appointed, I've had opinions on this matter and I've expressed that. But you also know the workings of government. I speak for the president. Whatever position the president has taken, that is the position I'm aligning with in respect of this matter. And then putting the case back to the media. If you think there are people who have not performed, you are free to mention them and mention their activities. And then there will always be a feedback from government. The way the government is built it's not like because you put somebody, it is sacrosanct. And you know that the president is not afraid to sack anybody in his government. This is one president that I can tell you for free that he is very, very free to sack. He's not held under hostage by any minister. There is nobody in his administration that is indispensable. But if you have facts, bring the facts to the table of the president, and then the president will assess that.
President talked about the National Credit Guarantee Company. I think that's something that he's floating right now. It's called the National Credit Guarantee Company, and he says it's going to be on board before the second quarter of the year. And headlines are carrying it this morning. They're saying this is expected to reduce food prices in the country. Can you talk to us a little bit about that as we wrap up?
Yeah, so the national credit guarantee the government intends to establish this year is to work in partnership with critical, stakeholders and agencies such as the Bank of Industry, Consumer Credit Corporation, National Sovereign Investment Agency, even the Ministry of Finance, private sector, and multilateral institutions. The whole idea is that to stand as a guarantee, especially for those ones that are underserved, like women and youth, so that they will be able to access funds for the purposes that it is intended for, whether business, entrepreneurship, and all of that. And it's a very wonderful initiative that we would only call on the Nigerian people to be on the lookout and take advantage of those opportunities. The problem we have with Nigeria is that when government roll out an initiative, they stay from a distance. They don't look at the opportunities that are open for them and make the effort to access it. I remember there were concerted campaign in Nelform before people access it. Even when they introduced one other credit system, they had to be calling people to take advantage of it. The citizens will be on the lookout because all of these policies are meant for them, for the purposes of affecting them positively. So it's a good initiative. When the company is established, it will now stand as a guarantee for the youth and for the women for the purpose of accessing the funds they need to do business.
We do have to let you go there, but I want to thank you very much, Mr. Daniel Bola, for being with us on the program. And good luck with all the work I know you have ahead of you. And thanks for dressing sharp on the new year. Most people don't realize you're supposed to do that on the 1st of January. You're supposed to dress sharp. I want to thank you so much again. God bless you and Happy New Year.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Daniel Bola there, spokesperson for the president, giving us an insight into a few of the things that they have planned for 2025. We will go on a short break right now. It's time for Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. More conversation afterwards. Stay with us.
Thanks, Kayla. Well, it's the first one for 2025, and I hope your 2025 is on to a good start. The first trading day of the year, that begins tomorrow. Keep an eye on all our business shows to set your trading agenda in 2025 so you can end up with good profit. All right, but during the final days of 2024, I had the privilege of visiting a farm in the Ekpe area of Lagos, the All Farmers Association of Nigeria. That's the Lagos chapter. The members took me on a journey from the farms to the food market, gauging what adds to the cost of food. And I also did some little farming myself. Enjoy. Members of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, Lagos chapter, not really in a working mood amidst the festivities, but ready to share their story in the process of producing food for the nation. Located in the Eredo area in Ekpe, Lagos State, with over 5 million farmers engaged in cultivating arable crops, aquaculture among others, the land size in the area estimated at 150 million parameters with above 50 million uncultivated. Majority of the land are freehold, while lease or rented lands account for about 20 million hectares across the Ekpe border axis. At a farm right here in Eredo, Ilara area, and this farm here produces potatoes, yams, cassava. So we're going to show you how most of these produce are brought out of the ground, and when you get it, at the market, and it finds its way, to your table. Follow us on this journey. Farmers are fully involved in every stage of production. Mr. Yakub Akingbade is harvesting plantain after 9 to 12 months of waiting patiently. The result of Mr. Akingbade's work is 2 bunches of plantains ready for the market.
When the cassava is actually bringing fruit, the plantain bringing fruit, it will have enough sucker to replace it. Even if we leave it, just cut the fruit, it will die naturally because it will actually have the younger ones that will replace it. So next year, this will be the 3-4 that will replace only this one. So we use sickle. So this time to cut it.
This bunch now.
Yeah.
I think I bought plantain earlier this week, and I know I paid about
If you get to market now, this one should be
I paid about 7,000 or 8,000.
From farm now, this should be around 5,000.
So
I get it from the market, it will be around 6,000, 7,000. But right from the farm, it will be around 4,500, 5,000. It depends on the distance.
I bought this in Lagos for about 8,000 naira. This bunch.
You know that the cost of transportation, that is, and this one is even because the road here is nearer and the market is not far. But if it is where the market is far, it will be cheaper. But to take it from that farm to the market, that is where the cost of transportation will affect the price.
So how much will it cost to transport a bunch of this now?
From here to our market here now, it will be around 500 naira. If you want to use Marwa or Okada, it will be around 500 naira. That is the minimum.
But what if you're taking this to a market inside Lagos? Let's say maybe now, one of those markets in there.
It depends on how many, but by then, from here to Lagos, if you have almost around 10 of these, to Lagos, it will cost you around 6,000, 7,000. It depends. It depends on the quantity, because they will charge you based on the quantity.
Maize is another staple crop from here.
It's very easy now, and it's more expensive than the wet one.
And our visit coincides with the harvesting of sweet potatoes. It's been about 5 months since it was planted, efforts in fertilizing and watering, and I get a first-hand experience harvesting.
This is the red type.
Straight from the ground.
Yes. So this is good for diabetes.
The farmer suggests that sweet potatoes are underutilized.
The price too have skyrocketed. Again, it's not like last year. Just because of the labor and irrigation, transportation, for us to get to the farm, you can see now, thank God where we are is even still very close. So that is what is causing the price of those commodities to get more expensive.
One difficulty which the farmers highlight is water shortage.
If you are planning to have an irrigation, you have to have deep line. And deep lines, where we are put, is from another country, and which they will tell you, because of the dollar rate, it has gone higher. So we will now add all those ones into what we will now produce in the farm.
A contribution to Nigeria, being the continent's biggest yam producer, is seen here. AFAN members plant and harvest for export, as they say this species and size is preferred abroad.
This is 3 now.
Nigerian farmers face several irrigation issues, from water scarcity, financial constraints, and others. Farmers here adopt the drip line, a method of watering crops using a network of pipes, tubing valves, and emitters to slowly drip water to the roots of plants. Interestingly, the drip line is majorly imported from Kenya. That was a very interesting experience there, bringing out the potatoes, bringing out the yam right there from the ground, and seeing that at the end of the day, once the food is brought out of the ground, the next thing is to find its way to the market. So a very good one there, and we'll definitely be following the trail to what plays out at the markets, because at the end of the day, after the farm is the market. From the farm, the crops are taken to the markets. The closest here is the Mojoda market, an ancient market and the first in Ekpe. The Mojoda market is a major market surrounded by communities like Ibawa, Ilara, among others, all coming together to buy and sell from the Mojoda market. Poultry is also sold in this market. The skyrocketing price of grains is feeding into the trade of poultry.
When I'm golden, we bought it from the farm at the rate of 7,800 naira. And transport is still there, feeding is still there. So we just put only 700 naira to sell the market.
What we see in the market today is beyond our expectation. The prices are just too outrageous. We want government to please come to our aid. We can't hit 3 square meal any longer. This country is just too expensive.
Their pricing is 1.5. We didn't do. So everything is cost. So we buy it like that.
In Nigeria, women make up a large portion of farming population, accounting for an estimated 70 to 75% of a country's agricultural workforce. The Lagos State AFAN women leader makes a case for empowering female farmers.
What we need from the government in order to assist us, because we are the model of the nation. We can feed all the nation, women in agri, food on the table. That is our slogan. We want government to help us so that the reducing of the price started from the fertilizer, the seed, the loan, both loan and grants in normal rates, like 1 digit. We want it from the government.
AFAN farmers have a shared shop in the market. They use it for storage of food commodity from farms before selling to marketers.
Though the prices of commodities inflated, it's very, very high this period, but which is up. But we knew what happened. It was because of the transportation, the high price on the fuel system, and the bad roads of which we bring our foods from where we produce. So we want government to assist us in all those, some of our road that leads to the farm. We want technical assistance, which is capacity building, the training for our farmers. We still want the price of commodity to get lower.
Processing also happens in the Mojoda market. There's an area for blending. Here, cassava is grounded to powder form, mainly for kids. As demand for cash continues to outstrip supply from banks and ATMs, POS operators are here to lend their services. A POS operator here shares how he gets cash.
We only have access to 10,000 naira daily. So what we do is we go to traders, those selling provisions, even those selling yams. So we go to them to source for cash. So in that process, we have to pay charges. So, and then after paying charges, then we have to add little in order to make our own profits.
As the festivities come to an end, experts and economic analysts see food prices cooling in the first quarter of 2025. But as 2025 begins today, it is hoped consumers get a break. All right, that was a very interesting experience for me. They've always had a thing for farming as a kid. Maybe I'll start some kind of little farm in my backyard at some point. All right, to our first conversation now. How can we ensure adequate funding for education in Nigeria in 2025? We'll also discuss the role of student loans, government funding, and private sector involvement in expanding access to quality education for all. Well, joining us for this conversation, as the first one in 2025, we have Mr. Akintunde Soya, as the MD CEO, Nigeria Education Loan Fund. That's NELFund. Joining me right here in the studio. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. Williams. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you. My first guest in 2025. Maybe I'll give you a plaque once we're done with this.
Always good to be the first.
But it's very interesting. Student loans.
Yes.
I know it's a first for Nigeria.
Sure.
At this point, we're not used to that.
No.
And I'd like to know what it was like in 2024 giving out student loans.
It was very interesting because, as you rightly pointed out, we haven't had a scheme like this, I think, since the 70s, okay? And that scheme in itself didn't end in glory for one reason or the other, at least for the generality of people. So this one was met with a great deal of skepticism, a great deal of issues around cultural receptiveness to taking loans, and then, of course, various fears around some of the other schemes across the world that perhaps haven't ended as well as people would like. I think the important thing to stress about this is that this is a sincere loan, it's interest-free, there's a long moratorium for payback, so it's very different to what happens elsewhere. The poverty rates in Nigeria have risen significantly because of 6 decades of, quite a lot of shenanigans. And what we have now is, a very sincere administration that's trying to correct that. And most importantly, with a recognition that education is the thing that can get us out of the woods. So those were the issues, the cultural issues, the approach to taking loans, the government skepticism or the skepticism around government programs, and of course, you know, the usual Nigerian factor, if you like.
And it's interesting you say it's interest-free.
Yes.
At this point. And we know the Central Bank of Nigeria raised rates about 850 basis points in 2024, trying to tame inflation. So you're telling me the interest rates don't impact the student loans at all?
Absolutely not. This is a government program. It's a program that is designed to help the most vulnerable people in society, the people who are vulnerable but want to make a go of getting their lives better. So, you know, the best thing for them is for us to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to access education, to be able to access knowledge. And the best way to do that is to really not make this a commercial activity, to make it an activity that is impactful, that people can embrace, because ultimately it's not just about the individual, it's also about the competitiveness of our nation, Nigeria.
All right, so I'm trying to imagine I'm a student. Though I wish I had this, you know, when I was in school. I wish I could take, you know, some of these student loans, and that would have taken me to a choice school, you know, of my choice. But I'm imagining I'm a student now. My school fees, I need to pay my school fees. I have exams, you know, coming up. How soon do I get that fund?
Okay, so, you know, different advantages for different generations, just referring to your earlier comment.
Right.
In terms of how soon you get the funds, the first thing I need to tell you is that we do not intervene directly with students. What we have is an online platform that students engage with. They put in certain pieces of data which we require, and once we confirm their eligibility, we then process. That process involves other organizations outside of us, or other individuals. So of course the students have to be very clear about what they're putting in. They have to be truthful, they have to be honest, and they have to put in accurate information. On the other side, we also engage with the educational institutions, who again have to make sure that they provide us into the database accurate information about their students. Once those two things happen, a process begins. And that process involves the students having, as I said, specific things: a bank account, JAMB entry into a tertiary institution that's owned by government and approved by us in terms of all the criteria that we require them to have. The students have to put in their basic information, like their bank account details, as well as other things that confirm that they are not only Nigerian using the NIN, but also financially included. Going further, once the loans are approved, the institution has to confirm back to us that the people who applied for the loan through us are indeed still with them, or with them at all. There is a process there that requires the institution to provide us with the information accurately and in a timely manner. That is an exercise that is a rate limiting step if the institution don't respond in time. So to your question, how long does it take?
Right.
Well, we carry out our processes and we try to ensure that everything is done within 30 days. However, if information is inaccurate, missing, incomplete, or the institutions don't respond in time, that particular institution will not get the benefit.
So that means there's a risk as a student, I might not get that fund on time.
There's an absolute risk that you might not get the fund on time, because there are dependencies involved in this. We're going to improve the technology so that the institutions can upload in real time as they receive new students. But remember, this scheme has only been going since the 25th of May. So it's really about half a year, about 6 months that it's been going. We're watching, we're trying to improve our systems and trying to improve our processes, trying to reduce our dependencies on other institutions. So that way we will find that as time goes on, it'll get faster. The other point I should make to you is that institutions, because of the staccato effect of them having had strikes, their institutional start dates have changed or are not uniform. And so, you know, the time that the loan is approved might be different to the time that value is received. We pay the institutions when they start. We pay the stipend of 20,000 naira a month to the students when the institution starts. So the time you apply and the time value is received might be different. We don't have a uniform system in terms of how, or a uniform start date for institutions across Nigeria. So, you know, those are all the complexities we're having to deal with.
And I hear there's also some kind of upkeep upkeep money for the students. How does that work?
Yeah,
is that part of the loan?
Yeah, you've heard correctly. So there are two loans that people can apply for. They can apply for the institutional loan, which covers 100% of their institutional fees, so that they have unfettered access to classes. There is a second loan that is optional that they can apply for, provided they've applied for the first loan. That's the upkeep that you just referred to. So we pay to the students who are successful at applying, who we approve, 20,000 naira a month for 12 months. So that's the session, the entire session, once they've been approved, and they get those funds every month so that they've got something to
so
put
it's
in
a
their
loan,
pockets.
It's still
a loan.
It has to be paid back.
Yes, it's not a grant.
It's like a loan for consumption.
Exactly. It's a loan for consumption, if you want to call it that, if you can refer to things like handouts as consumption, if you can refer to things like photocopying as consumption, if you can refer to things like buying data as consumption. But of course, the funds are there for them to choose what they want to do with it. If they want to feed with it, it's fine. But it's for consumption, but it's also to ensure that they can go to classes, with some of the things that they need outside of their tuition fees or their institutional fees, which we've already paid. But it is a loan.
All right, so I'm imagining again that I'm a student and I've taken this loan, I've gone through school, but I don't want to pay back. What happens?
So, it's a good question. If you don't want to pay back, then, there's a problem there for you immediately, because one of the things that happens is that we take out a mandate where we can actually retrieve those funds from your account. What we don't do is we don't criminalize those who don't pay back. It's very important to us that people who want to take money or take a loan for education are not criminalized, because it's a good cause. It's a good thing for them to want to do. I don't think they're going to find many people who don't want to pay back. I think you might find people who can't pay back because they don't have a job or they don't have the money. Not wanting to pay back is different to not being able to pay back. What we're doing is we're saying the organization that employs them checks on a database that we have to see if they have a loan. It is the organization, the company, the factory, the business that employs them that takes a 10% deduction from their salary and pays it back to the NEL fund. Unless they're self-employed, in which case there's an obligation on their company themselves to make that 10% payback. They only pay when they're earning. They don't pay when they're not earning. So we don't want to criminalize the people taking the funds, because we want to encourage people to get better education, to rise to the highest levels they can in terms of their knowledge. It makes good for them, but it's also very good for the competitiveness of our great nation, Nigeria, or soon to be great nation, Nigeria.
Right, and I'm trying to imagine what sets students apart, in getting the loan. If I'm studying something that maybe might not be in demand, in future or present, do I still get a loan?
Today, yes, you do get a loan today. As long as the course is accredited by the accreditation bodies in Nigeria that supervise the government-owned institutions, you will get a loan for any course you apply for. However, it's important to begin to think strategically for two reasons. First of all, why would a responsible lender want to give you a loan knowing that the course you're doing may not earn you enough or even get you a job to be able to pay back? We need to start thinking about these things, and the best time to think is now, not later. The second thing about the course-based issue is that we recognize that this is a developing country. Okay? However we want to define that. We are not Switzerland, we're not Canada, we're not the US. We are developing, we're building, we're trying to get access for our people to all the resources that government can provide so that they can build and add to the nation. We need to recognize that for that reason, we have to look at skills and look at courses that feed into that narrative so that we can develop faster. There is a third point I want to make. The third point I want to make is that there are countries out there who are looking to outsource various things. We've got 78 million people in our workforce in Nigeria today. We want countries to look at Nigeria and outsource some of the things that are perhaps too expensive for them to run themselves in their own countries, so that we can earn the foreign exchange, or we can earn the input from income from those countries delivering to us. If we're training everybody or we're funding everybody to go and do courses that are irrelevant in the world, we're really wasting everybody's time. I said a few days ago that things like shorthand are no longer relevant because secretarial services are no longer really needed. Everybody can type, everybody's got a laptop. So, there are some courses we need to be very careful about. Some have phased out already. There are other things coming in. We've got solar engineering coming in into our world. We've got electric cars arriving into our world. And technology is advancing in so many ways. We've got to remain focused on what's to come, not what has gone.
Right, now talking about what's to come, what can we expect, in 2025?
Okay, so in 2025, so what we've done, the mandate that the president has given to us that has been turned into a law is that we are to provide academic support to those who want to go to universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, those types of places. We've started that, and we believe that we have a fairly useful process going now. Now, as I said, the president has given us a second mandate to go and look at skills development. So President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, when we met with him, that we've got to ensure that we are able to process and develop and help and support people who are perhaps non-academic, people who have physical skills, people who have craft skills, people who have creative skills, carpenters, plumbers, tilers, and some of the other engineering or low-level engineering, blue-collar type activities. So in 2025, we're going to put a huge amount of focus into understanding what the courses are, what the vocational courses and the skills-based courses are that we need to be training on so that we can accelerate our development and reduce the propensity and need for people to come in and do those jobs for us.
Right. Well, quite interesting. I guess you have your 2025 cut out, for you. But, going forward, I'm sure a couple of students got the fund in 2024. What are you expecting for a number of students that would get this fund, and how much are you expecting to get from the budget to fund all of this?
Oh, okay. So by law, we are expecting to receive 1% of federal inland revenue taxes, or collection, should I say. That's probably somewhere in excess of 200 billion, 300 billion, I don't know. It depends on what they collect and what they declare. So we also have the ability to go out and source funding from other places, either from private donors or other institutions of state or privately owned institutions. So that kind of answers, I believe, the funding expectations that we have. We fully intend to invest these funds in looking at the right skills centers. So we're going to be using government-approved skill centers to help train people, where we fully expect to be able to support, or at least affect about 50 million lives. But going back to the first part of your question, on the academic side, today we have about 340,000 applicants for the student loan on the academic side. We're looking really to get to about 1.8 million next year. So it depends on the education, the population, if you like, of the tertiary institutions that are federal government owned. 1.8 million thereabouts are the people we want to eventually fund in the next sort of 12 to 18 months. We'll see who applies. We've got to wait for people to apply.
But very quickly now, before I let you go, what kind of complaints do you get from prospective students?
Okay, so the biggest complaint we get, and there aren't many of them, are that there are sometimes delays in them receiving their stipends. That's happened for a couple of reasons, and even their fees. As I explained to you earlier, there is a process we must follow. We're spending government funds. We're spending taxpayer revenues. We have to have a process, and that process has dependencies. And so occasionally, if an institution hasn't uploaded the right volume of data, they haven't uploaded the complete data, they haven't uploaded completely accurate data, it will cause problems for the students. They're looking to us to give them funds. So they come to us with a complaint. And then, we either ask them to go back to the institution, or we go to the institution and say, look, this is not acceptable. You're holding people up. That's the biggest complaint we get. Outside of that is the normal thing you might get with an IT system. I logged in, it didn't let me in.
And I can imagine that will be solved in 2025.
It will be solved, but technology is like that. You will always have somebody who pushes the wrong button, or pushes the button and something that was supposed to happen didn't happen. That's just normal. Any website will give you But we're on an online portal. We don't want any human interface. We don't want any graft.
Fantastic.
So that's the price we pay.
All right, fantastic. We'll keep tracking your growth here. Thank you so much. It was great having you on the show. That was Mr. Akintunde Sawyer, MD CEO. Nelfund, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
See you again. Enjoy the year.
All right, so that's the end for the first one in 2025. Tomorrow, the markets are open, and definitely you want to watch to know what your investment strategy will be in 2025. Thank you for watching. That's it from me on Business Morning. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Well, this is still Sunrise Daily. That was Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And the whole package usually goes in a particular direction. And here now, we want to talk about you. What are the things that you need to do to manage your expectations in the year ahead? Now, with me in the studio is Kuro John Gobo, who is Head of Faculty and Lead Consultant, Purple Training and Consulting. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ayo. And Happy New Year.
I wish you the same. It was a year, right?
It was.
For those who didn't expect the way, this year, January 1st, 2025, as on January 1st, 2024, people had expectations. People had things lined up, planned out. People wrote some things down. But a good number of people may not have seen some of the things that they experienced ahead. So tell us about all of those dynamics and why there is a need to take a second look at anything now.
Okay, I've spent the past week talking about resolutions, and it's been an interesting conversation. Why do you start? Why don't they work? What do you have control over? And I think the first distinction I tried to make was that the resolution is not necessarily a goal, and usually people make them in the moment. But we'll come to that later. How do we handle these expectations? Let's first clarify what an expectation is. It is simply a belief or a notion about a future event or about yourself or someone else, maybe in terms of their performance or what you expect them to do in behavior. The truth is, with expectations, you don't know what's coming ahead. And people need to understand that. And I think that's where most people, we're not very real with ourselves when we start making plans and deciding what kind of expectations to carry through the year. Now, last year was a very interesting year. We saw things leapfrog from 1 to hundreds in no time. In terms of prices, people lost jobs, people got jobs. To many people, it was probably one of the worst years we've had in terms of economy and all of that. But guess what? To some people, it was their best year yet. And I think a lot of that had to do with how they manage expectations, not just going into the year and hoping or believing on things. And please know, this is important. Expectations have different dimensions to them. Sometimes they are realistic, sometimes they are not. Sometimes they are positive, sometimes they are negative. Some of them are even unspoken. Nobody talks about them at all. But expectations have a very great impact on our lives. They affect our behavior, which then determines our results. They affect our self-esteem. They lead to satisfaction sometimes disappointment. They even affect our emotions and feelings. So people need to take them a little more seriously as we go ahead.
So generally, when people talk about New Year's, I was listening, by the way, to Dr. Sam Adeyemi yesterday.
Okay. And
he said something at the beginning of his speech. He said in the middle of the 90s, 94, 95, there was a lot of tumult. It was about that time, I think a year or two, between a year and two before then, was the famous June 12 election annulment, which was adjudged the freest and fairest. And of course, the hulabaloo that resulted from that. But he also made a point that was about the same time, rough and tumultuous as the period was. That was about the same time that many people started businesses. Many people thrived a lot at that time. In the midst of all of that hullabaloo, in the midst of all of that tumult, in the midst of all of that political uncertainty, upheaval, impasse, that was one of the words that came up at that time. So looking at that, and if we can compare that time to now, is there a comparison?
I think there is, and that's why I mentioned earlier that some people had their best year yet, in the same year where some people had it bad. If you check the Forbes 500, the biggest, largest companies in the world today, quite a few of them were birthed during a time of depression. And people think depression is just something human beings go through. Economy is go through depression. There could be a recession and a depression if it continues. So America had a great depression and things were really bad. One of the things that happens to people when things get bad is mindset shift. People need to begin to realign things. So you begin to check your wants and your needs differently when there's less in terms of resources. How do they say that thing? Necessity is the mother of invention. So where there's more of a necessity, people need to begin to do things differently. Case in point, pap and custard could actually be the same, but the price differential is wide. You could not live without custard when you could afford it. When the money is no longer available, pap becomes attractive. When the desirable is not available, the available becomes desirable. So the truth is, when people have less, they find ways, or they should find ways, to do more with less. And most times, entrepreneurs get born from there, innovation comes from there. Actually, many companies have been built on the back of a bad economy. Many people have changed what they do, chosen to look for more sources of income, provide more value. And this is the primary reason why. When the economy is bad and things are bad, there are more problems. So people who have the right mindset, more problems means more opportunities.
Now, when you say that people need to adapt to economic realities, what do you mean? Here's the reason for the question. Okay. It's already bad.
Clearly.
And it's a global phenomenon.
True.
Everyone in the world is talking about the same thing. And mention the sector. There is a downward look. But then looking at the economic outlook, the president is looking up, because a number of things as far as the president and the indices available to him are concerned, things are looking up. What goes up in Nigeria is beginning to come down. And strange as that is, it's one of the points that the president is using to score himself. So when you say adapting to economic realities, what are you talking about, particularly for individuals and small businesses?
Okay, it's become clear now that whatever happens in the economy affects us. I mean, in the past, when people felt insulated from it, I mean, I could go out. Now, I don't think anybody is insulated or is not affected by the economy. So people need to understand that if the economy is generally better, usually there's more going around, so you don't have to do much to get more. If the economy is not doing so well, then you should do more to get more. That's the mentality I think people need to adopt. Let's talk about the budget. I'm not the greatest economist in the world, but I pay attention to what the country is trying to do, because it speaks to, those budget figures speak to what we expect to happen. Let's talk expectations a bit. So currently, FX rates are about 1,550, thereabout. The budget for this year, 2025, says FX rates will be at 1,400 to $1. Inflation rate today is 34.6%. The budget says we expect inflation to come down to 21%. You mentioned things going up and coming down. Part of the expectations. We're doing 1.6 million barrels per day with crude oil production. We expect to go to 2 million barrels per day. OPEC quota being set aside. OPEC thinks we should be doing about 1.5. A few things I just thought to look at quickly. Now, question is this. Whenever somebody says, my expectation is this, they would usually then put it down on paper, and they have assumptions leading to the expectations are what lead to the budget. So because we expect dollar rates to be 1,400 to $1, we have set certain things in the budget. Expenditure will be X, income will be Y, those kind of things. The government cannot continue to do things the same way and expect a different result. Same thing should happen to individuals. In fact, we hear that insanity, according to Einstein, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So I think what people should begin to do is this. Pay attention to the fact that you must learn to do more with less. When the economy is not booming, you would naturally have less. But you must continue to live, you must continue to pay fees, you must continue to pay rent and all of that. Begin to think that way. And with expectations, please pay attention. This is so key. be honest with your expectations of yourself and other people. Nigeria is one country people like to show off more than what they have. This is a time when we need to be real with ourselves, with everything, not just finances, everything generally. Many of these things we've discussed in the past.
But then, in terms of expectations, the workplace is a place where everybody expects more.
True.
More pay, more benefits, more emoluments, more promotions, better opportunities, and limitless possibilities.
True.
So, what are the things that you would advise that anyone who is supposed to resume work tomorrow, or maybe even Monday, should be looking at in terms of workplace dynamics?
My suggestion is to plan to give more value to get more value. I think it's an unfair conversation to walk up to an employer in this economy or anyone experiencing what the world is experiencing today and say, I want a raise because the economy is bad. I want a raise because there's inflation. I think it's unfair. Guess what? The same things you deal with as an individual, your employer would be dealing with. And it is the value you produce at work that gives more value to your employer, that gets more value for your employer, and then brings more value to you. So my thinking would be, plan to give more value to your employer. I'd rather walk up to you and say, sir, in the last 1 year, I have brought in 80% of the clients. I have done XYZ to increase our efficiency. I've saved you 2 billion naira. You should say amen to that.
Of course. I say amen.
I've saved you 2 billion naira in the last 1 year. I think I've pulled my weight enough to request for an increase in what is coming back to me. That's a more fair statement than just to say, because the economy is bad, we should increase what we're doing. Now, employers, please don't take that as an excuse. If we can do more as employers, yes, please do more. But the truth is, we have to balance both out. So people going back to work, ask yourself, how much more value can you bring to the workplace so that you can then demand more value from the workplace? And the easiest, fastest way to do so is start thinking how to use small things to achieve big things. Less time, less resources, less stress. Do the work once and not have to do it twice. I plan every year using a planner. This is one I said I'll show it to you today. This is my last year's planner. This is December. This is 2025. Every day, I would write down the things I want to do and begin to plan to do them quicker, faster, better. My simple analogy is that money always follows value, and the more value I put out, the more value I'll get. So if you want a promotion, begin to plan to do more. Begin to plan to give more value. Even if you don't ask for it, normally you would deserve it. And where they don't give you enough value for what you bring in, where you work today, maybe it's time to look for other things to do with the remaining time you have. You have a 24-hour day split into 3 parts. That's 8, 8 hours for your employer. You have 16 for yourself. Maybe it's time to do more with that time.
Some would say it's a tough call. But then, you know, looking at the challenges are limitless and they are enormous.
True.
And, talk to us, before I bring in Kayla, talk to us about the need for mental health support, particularly at the workplace. Many times you can't predict what's going to happen, but it will happen. There is no way such things will not affect deliverables. So, do you see a responsibility for the workplace or for the individuals to protect their own mental health?
I think it's both ways. People talk about work-life balance as if we expect our work to balance our lives. The truth is, your work, or occupation is just 1 in 8 parts of you. There's physical, mental, spiritual, and co. So if your other areas, the other aspects are not balanced, your work will not be balanced. It will affect work. So responsibility number 1 is on you. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to your mind, what you take in, do the work and get the job done. Many people in today's world just do enough to earn. Now that's the employee's perspective. For the employers, can we begin to do a little more? I'm a bit of both, so I can speak for both sides. For the employers, we should be able to do a little more. Some of the things that take money out of your employees' pockets the most would be commute, especially in the city of Lagos, but in most other parts of Nigeria. Commute, daily commute, and lunch money, when they eat lunch, when they come to work every day. So how about you begin to look for ways to ameliorate that? There could be packages given directly to help you rent homes closer to your place of work, or hire people close to, that live close to where your workplace is. Begin to ask yourself seriously, how often do you really need people to come into the office physically? Are you measuring attendance, or are you measuring productivity? They are two different things. So that I come to work at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. doesn't mean I'm productive. It could be that I'm a time waster. All right? Are there things I could do outside of the workplace? Can we have clear, measurable KPIs that could make me work outside the workplace? You don't have to come. So the first guy I hired as a person, I hired in 2018. And I told him from day one, you'd resume in the office 2 days a week. He didn't take the job at first because he didn't understand why anybody would not come to work every day. And I told him, once you have a laptop and I give you Wi-Fi, you don't have to come to work every day. So when COVID came in 2020, he was in shock. How did I know? I said, I just tailored what I was doing with you to suit both of us. I can't pay you top dollar for the job, but I can reduce your expenses and allow you to do more with your time. Employers need to begin to do that. Some people have staff bosses. Some provide lunch in the workplace. Some even bring counselors to talk to employees every now and then. Some send their staff on trainings so they can learn to do more with less. Employers need to begin to think like that, because if you don't manage your greatest resource, the assets on the job, they will mess you up.
Kayla.
I mean, I'm smiling from ear to ear listening to Mr. Gobo there. I've written down a few things. You've dashed a few of the hopes of the Nigerian people, because a lot of people were looking at this economy and thinking, well, once I resume work on Monday, I'm going to my Oga's office to tell him, sir, the economy is hard. I need more money. So you're saying, no, we shouldn't do that. Instructive, very instructive statements there. And then, of course, the talk about, people, employers, instead of increasing money, which really isn't going to make any difference, why don't you help your staff reduce the cost of a lot of things that take a lot of their money, and in many cases, actually food and transportation.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the home, if you can help us, so we can cut our cloth according to our cloth. I mean, cut our coats according to our cloth, yes, not according to our size. So as we're trying to navigate this economy, we're hearing inflation might even go higher. Things are going to get a little bit more expensive, at least according to the figures that we're seeing. The government says they're going to do everything to push it down. Now, in fact, I wrote down 3 major things happening this year. The National Credit Guarantee Company is coming up immediately. The president is asking for a $1 trillion economy. He said that's the plan for 2025. National Values Charter will be coming up this year as well. And we also hear that the Youth Confab will be taking place in the first quarter of this year. So while the government is doing their bit, we are still having to grapple with an astronomical increase in the cost of everything. How do we manage it in the home front?
I think it's back to what I asked at first. Manage your expectations will still be the starting point. And it starts with you, all right? We need to pay attention to a few things like what are needs, what are wants, what do I have to do, what do I not have to do, and begin to work around that. And the starting point probably will be to create a budget. The same way the federal government created a budget and had assumptions attached. Do the same thing and begin to match income to expenses. When it comes to, people talk about managing as if it only speaks to money. But the truth is money affects all of these things. So this I've expressed a few times in the past. If you are going into a new year, you should be asking yourself, whether going into a new year or not, can you afford what you are living with or living by today? Can you really afford it? If you live in an apartment where your apartment is 1.2 million naira in rent a year, you should just save 100,000 naira a month. If you can't save 100,000 naira a month, you are living above your means. Simple logic. Find a 600,000 naira apartment and pull out 50K every month. You would have less financial stress from paying your rent. Do the same thing with fees. Do it with food. I mean, find ways to do different things, like carpooling. We've expressed that before. If 5 of us, Ayo, myself, you, and 2 others, live in the same environment and work in the same office, why do I have to drive 5 days a week? Why don't I drive 1 day a week and then join Ayo on Tuesday, join you on Wednesday, join someone else on Thursday, and cut cost? Don't expect employers to make changes to suit you. Expect government to make changes in expenditure to help you, but you're not making any yourself. So start thinking in that wise and learn to do more with less. The more you pay attention to that, do more with less, the more productive you become, the more value you give, the less stress you have, mental or any other kind of stress.
I mean, one of the biggest stresses that we face in this country is January. January and its 365 days. And every bill comes in January.
Yep.
So for the person right now who's thinking school fees, January, rent, January, memorial for my grandmother, January. Everything is happening in January. How do you manage the expectations, knowing that you really want a particular quality, especially when it comes to schools? You see a lot of people putting their children in these very expensive schools, and it's not because they love the school, the money they are paying. It's because, well, I want my kids to have a particular standard of education, and I want them to go to particular schools. But things have changed, and those prices. How do I manage that? How do I not pull my child out of a good school and put him in a school that I think is giving them less and still be able to manage my finances and all of this? How do we handle that?
Let's start with schools and be clear about something. That something is expensive does not always mean it is the best. Let's start from there. So many parents send children to schools and don't check on their words, the kind of education they are getting, the kind of value they produce, how they speak, how intelligently they can communicate. So maybe we should begin to check those things again. I don't think the best schools are cheapest, but I think we need to begin to measure, because the thing here is not cutting costs, is maximizing cost, getting value for every money you get. So it's January already. Starting point with schools is check and confirm that they get the best they can in that environment. And education is not just what they teach them, it's people they relate with, their colleagues in school and all. Secondly, begin to plan such that you don't have this January pressure. January is the longest month. I hear somebody said January is 99 days or worse. The reason is because, like you said, many things come together in January. What if I choose to stagger them? What if I don't pay rent in January and I pay in June? And I can deliberately do that. What if I get to a point where every month of the year, which is the biggest thing, I have a portion of my money set aside for that January problem. So if I have rent to pay, save rent every month. If I have school fees to pay, calculate the amount for a full year, convert it to a monthly figure, and put that figure away every month. If you do that, you see this January pressure people have, you won't have it. And that is one thing people need to pay attention to the most. We don't earn annually in Nigeria. We earn monthly, but we have many annual bills to pay. Begin to do a match between your income and your expenditure. Do that match better, and most likely you have less stress.
I mean, I do know that you work with a lot of young people. I mentioned earlier that the youth confab is in the first quarter of this year. Just so, as someone who has, some experience with young people, what kind of, and they say that there's going to be a recruitment process. It's going to be done by the Ministry of Youth. They're going to be able to recruit these young people, get them to discuss what kind of country they want, what kind of changes they want in their country, how they want to navigate 2025 and the following month, just so it doesn't focus on politics for 2027. In your view, as a young person, let's say I get nominated to be at the confab, what kind of conversations should young people be having that can impact their future?
First thing is to think sustainability and strategy. Those two things are not short-term conversations. A major reason why in Nigeria we start and stop and start and stop, especially when leadership changes, is because we don't have a long-term plan anybody is chasing. So a new government, governor, president comes into power and says, my mandate is X, and we pursue X for 4 years. And then when the new person comes, we drop X and start with Y. Please go into that confab and discuss long-term. That's the first major thing I would say. If every country we aspire to relocate to jackpot to live in, to go on holidays have done long-term plans. And that's what we should be doing. The first thing, we should stop making short-term plans in Nigeria. You can have a vision for 20 years and then have annual goals to pursue them. Everything they discuss with you in that confab should be long-term starting points. Second thing is there should be clear strategies to get them done. We're beyond being bamboozled into saying we'll create 3 million jobs. And there has to be a way. Government is not supposed to be creating jobs for us. Government should just make the environment enabling, and we would create the jobs. So people need to begin to think from that perspective. And thirdly, if I have a chance to chip this in, The average age in Nigeria today is 17.6, 18 years thereabout. That means there are many young people. Please don't let the people who are older and who have been in Nigeria long enough tell you how the next 40 years will be. They will not be here. I'm not cursing them, it's just the truth. Anybody 90 today, 80, 70, 60, I don't think they expect to be here in 40 years. So don't plan with them in your mind. Let them help with the planning. I mean, they are the helm of affairs today, but begin to think like that. Where do you see Nigeria in the next 30 years, next 40 years? Why do other countries have crude oil? And they are fantastic countries in terms of everything they have, and we're not. Start asking questions in that dimension. I think that's the best thing to do. And please don't go there and get bribed by anybody. Don't drink Coke, collect riba, as we call it in Nigeria, and then go back home, feel good. You'd have done us a major disservice if you get into that confab and come back out and nothing changes. In fact, some of us will look for you and ask you questions.
Well, I guess one thing, that, since Kayla said she picked up a pen and paper and started to write notes, maybe it's a good opportunity to tell someone, you need to watch this episode of the program again. And guess what? It will be on our YouTube page for you to check out Channels TV on YouTube. Thank you so much for coming this morning.
Thank you very much.
John Gobo is Head of Faculty and Lead Consultant, Purple Training and Consulting. Thank you. We appreciate your time again.
Thank you very much.
So let's hope that now you know how to manage your expectations in the year ahead. Amaya Makinde, have a beautiful day.
Well, it's a new year. Oh, do we have time to take a few messages, I think?
No, maybe you keep it to tomorrow, but don't make promises.
Oh dear. Well, thank you, Festus, and thank you, Professor Nakena, for your messages, and have a wonderful new year ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.